I used to think mountains were honest. They don't flirt or negotiate. They loom, they hold, they take. If a ridge collapses, it's not a secret, it's physics. That was before the winter I learned how quietly a person can disappear in plain sight. My wife's name is Rowan. We moved to a high valley called Grayknife Basin because we told ourselves that altitude would make everything simple. In the city, our arguments echoed down narrow halls. Here, the air was thin enough that every sentence had to earn itself. We rented a timber frame lodge on the north slope, under a line of black spruce that looked like punctuation marks against the snow. The locals called the mountain above us Widow's Anvil, because storms caught on the western face and pounded until something broke. On our first night, the wood stove inhaled like a tired animal. Rowan stood by the window, her reflection floating in the dark, mug held in both hands as if it were a small animal she didn't trust not to jump. She had always been light on her feet, moving like a person who expects the floor to change its mind. In the city, I found that charming. In the mountains, it felt like foreshadowing. The first strange thing was the notebook under the bench by the door. It looked like any lodge guest book spines broken by years of mittens. Inside, instead of "Great Weekend" comments, there were entries with dates and grid coordinates. Some had a simple X, some had the words "switchback cash" written in a spare hand. The most recent entry read, R1219, lower spur, 3 ribbons. R. Rowan's initial. I asked her that night casually if she'd seen any ribbons on the trail. "What kind of ribbons?" she said. "Any kind," I said. She shrugged and looked back at the window, where the snow made a sound like sand poured through a drum. "Maybe wind flags," she said. "Maybe they mark avalanche study lines." She had worked outdoor education before grad school. She knew just enough mountain language to bury things. Grayknife's hamlet had one store that served as both grocery and gossip. There I met Jonas, a man whose shoulders had been taut by 30 winters. He ran the volunteer rescue hut halfway up the basin and wore the kind of beard that announces good news softly and bad news without decoration. "You're the couple up at the Anvil Lodge," he said. "Watch your cornices. Watch the wind. If you hear thunder when there's no storm, it's the ridge letting go." Rowan liked Jonas, not in a way that triggered alarm, in the way a person likes a map that doesn't lie. He showed us how to tune the weather radio, what numbers to call if we heard a hollow boom, where the snowmobiles parked when the road clamped shut. He asked if we had beacons. We said yes. He tested them and nodded like a priest approving a translation. We fell into a mountain rhythm. Dawn tea, a small breakfast because the air punishes greed, a skin up the timberline if the forecast behaved, rows of wet gear hung like flags by the stove. I worked from a corner of the loft, writing code that didn't care about scenery. Rowan took her camera and went looking for light, which was how she had always made her best photographs, by finding places where the world bent and the sun remembered to forgive it. A week before Christmas, the wind turned wrong. Instead of speaking down the valley, it curled back in and built cornices like jaws above the South Bowl. The forecast used words like persistent weak layer and considerable. Jonas left a note on our door. "No highs, trees only. Listen." That night, I woke to the sound of our house breathing too fast. The stove had settled. The beams popped as if remembering their past lives as trees. Rowan wasn't in bed. I found her by the back door, boots on, headlamp in hand, looking at the line of black spruces as if they were offering a test. "Couldn't sleep?" I asked. "Moon," she said. "It's making the basin look like a map. I want to see it." "It's 2 a.m., I said. "Maps will wait." She watched me like I was both familiar and useless. "I won't go far," she said. "Just to the creek." I said the sensible thing. She went anyway. 14 minutes later, she came back with snow on her lashes and a little color in her cheeks like a decision had been made. The second strange thing was the tin box in the gear room. It was behind a crate of old skins, under a coil of climbing rope that had cracked with age. Inside, a cheap burner phone with a cracked corner, a folded topo map of the basin with circles drawn in red wax pencil, and 3 cloth ribbons, blue, blue, red. Each ribbon had a knot halfway down, like it had been measured against a particular tree. Rowan came in while I was looking. I didn't flip the lid closed fast enough. She watched me the way people watch a deer on a road, afraid any movement will cause the wrong one. What are the ribbon? I asked. Markers, she said. There's a group. We call ourselves the switchbacks. What do you switch back from? Bad decision, she said. Places you need to pass twice so you don't let yourself go straight over. It sounded like a joke you tell when the truth is heavier than your lungs. What is the phone for? Radio doesn't always carry, she said. We leave notes. There are caches on the trail dry socks, a thermos, a space blanket. Not everyone who runs from a life has a plan. And the red circles on the map? Don't worry about those, she said with a smile that was almost pity. Those are places the mountain keeps its own counsel. I didn't say what I wanted to, the obvious question about who she was running from. Instead, I said I trusted her. It sounded good. It also tasted like I was reheating yesterday's soup. The switchbacks, I learned, were a real thing, or real enough. In Grayknife, a lot of spouses arrived hoping for miracle air. A lot of them found instead that altitude only amplifies what you brought. The switchbacks started years ago, when a woman left a ribbon on a trail where she'd turn back rather than go to a cabin she knew would hold a man capable of hurting her. People added to it, ribbons for decisions they didn't trust themselves to repeat. The rescue hut kept thermoses for nights when arguments cut like wind. No one talked about it loudly. The mountain prefers secrets that help, but there were other circles on the map, places that weren't caches, places with names like Bristle Ridge Cut and Broken Tooth narrow traverses where a wrong step becomes a headline. Each red circle had a date. Next to one, simply R. On solstice, the wind softened for a day. Jonas radioed that the bowl might hold if we didn't test it. Trees, he said again, like a father who knows his children's faces. We skied the timberways and listened to the snow settle. Rowan was light on her feet, quicker than me, not because of muscle, but because she trusted where she placed weight. At noon, we stopped at the old fire lookout, boarded and sullen, but still holding a view. Rowan set her skis against a stump and looked at the path through the trees toward Broken Tooth. Would you ever go out there, she asked, on a day like this? No. On any day. I don't like ridges that think they're knives, I said. Why? She didn't answer. She took a picture of the basin instead, then another, then one more, as if the third might confess a different truth. That night, the weather radio crackled with phrases that mean tension. Warming event, upside-down snowpack, slab. I woke at 3 to a sound like a truck driving through the sky without lights. The mountain exhaled. Somewhere a ridge collapsed and became a river of memory. In the morning, the bull wore an apron of broken timber. A crown line cut the face like a bad scar. Jonas snowmobiled up to the rescue hut and we heard him calling names on the radio. 3 people were missing. 2 were found by noon buried shallow, lucky or stubborn. One wasn't. The name made my heart misstep. Ellie, one of the baristas in town who had once told Rowan she liked her boots, and Rowan had smiled like a plant receiving sun. Do you know where she goes? Jonas asked Rowan at our porch, voice steady because panic is a waste in a valley like this. She likes the ridge trails, Rowan said. She leaves ribbons. What color? Jonas asked, and it was the first time I understood that the mountain had a color code for sorrow. Yellow, Rowan said. Then she's in the trees, Jonas said. I'll check the cut. He checked. The mountain kept its counsel. After the search, the basin went quiet in the way hospitals go quiet after visiting hours. Rowan stopped sleeping. She stopped singing under her breath when she made tea. She returned the tin box to its place and looked at it like it owed her money. I pretended not to notice in the way people do when their noticing would require a decision they haven't learned to make. On New Year's Eve, we were supposed to go to the Grange Hall for a potluck where people would play fiddles and pretend the year had promises. The wind had other opinions. It shoved snow across the road until the plows gave up. I baked a pie badly. Rowan opened a bottle we'd been saving and poured without ceremony. At midnight, we kissed like polite acquaintances. At 2 a.m., the burner phone buzzed in the tin box. The sound was small enough to ignore. Rowan didn't. She took it out with both hands like it might break open. She read, and something in her changed temperature. What is it? I asked. A signal, she said. From who? From me, she said. From a version of me I'm trying not to be. It was coordinates. The lower spur, 3 ribbons, a red circle on the map, a blue ribbon in the box, and a night that frothed at the edges. She layered up without narration. I did too, because that's what you do if you still believe in the possibility of we. We took headlamps and beacons and a rope that had seen better knots. The trail to the lower spur ran through trees that fussed against each other. At the first switchback, a blue ribbon hung from a branch, half frozen, knotted at the midpoint. Rowan reached out and touched it with the back of her glove like it might bite. "This was mine," she said. "From September." We climbed. Another ribbon. Another. Each at a decision point. The kind of breadcrumbs you leave when you don't trust hunger to choose well. At the lower spur, the world narrowed to a shelf of snow with drop on one side and trees gripping the mountain on the other with their best roots. "Why are we here?" I asked, though the coordinates were a perfectly good answer. "Because I thought about leaving you," she said, and it was almost a mercy to hear it out loud. "Because I came this far alone last time and left ribbons to remind myself to turn back. Because Ellie followed my flags and the mountain kept her. Because Jonas found her scarf under the cut and a yellow ribbon at the broken alder, and I don't know if I taught someone to be brave or stupid." I wanted to say she wasn't responsible. I also wanted to say she was. Instead, I said, "What does the signal mean?" "It means the other switchbacks are at their stations," she said. "It means if one of us can't choose in daylight, we wait at the lower spur under our own flags and make the decision where we hung the proof." "Which decision?" "To go home," she said. "Or not." The wind pressed a cold hand against my throat. Rowan stood in the beam of my headlamp, like a person lit for interrogation. She closed her eyes. "I didn't sleep with anyone," she said, and I believed it more than my bones. "I slept in the rescue hut once when I couldn't make my feet go back to the lodge. It smelled like stale coffee and wet wool. Jonas gave me tea and no questions. Did you want questions?" "I wanted weather," she said, "the kind that makes the choice for you." "And now?" "I want someone to hold the rope," she said, "and not let me call it fate if I step wrong." I tied us in, not because the spur demanded it, the snow was honest, but because it was a ritual I could perform without lying. We stood under the last blue ribbon and breathed until the cloud from our mouths matched, until some part of our bodies relearned we were a pair. We turned back. At the third switchback, the wind dropped, and a sound reached us, thin as a wire, a voice calling a name that wasn't ours. We paused. The name came again. Rowan looked at me, and I saw the decision arrive like sunlight under a door. "We should check," she said. We cut off the spur into the trees, angling toward the sound. It isn't smart to leave a trail at night and wind. It's worse to pretend you didn't hear a human voice. At a small bench under a jackstraw of fallen spruce, we found a woman sitting in the snow, with her gloves off and her eyes on the kind of horizon only people in trouble can see. She was alive because stubbornness sometimes beats physics. Not Ellie, someone older, the postmistress, I realized, out of place at 2 a.m., unless a letter had come that refused to be read inside. "I can't stand it," she said when we crouched beside her. "The light in my kitchen keeps showing me his chair." "We'll walk you down," Rowan said. "You can hate the chair in the morning." We put her hands in our gloves and our hands in our pockets, and we walked her down between us the way you walk a drunk friend past a bouncer. At the first blue ribbon, she touched it and nodded once to someone who wasn't there. At the road, Jonas's snowmobile found us like a dog who knows who needs finding. He didn't ask questions. He took the postmistress's weight like a man lifts his own worry. Back at the lodge, Rowan held my face and said, "I wanted to be the kind of person who leaves only blue ribbons. I left red circles too. I don't know how to live with that." "You don't live with them," I said, because something had finally unclenched in me. "You outnumber them, one by one." We slept the way you sleep after carrying a stranger's future for half an hour. Hard, fast, guilty. In the morning, the mountain had a new wrinkle across its brow. The radio said 2 more avalanches, no losses. Jonas left a thermos of coffee on our porch, and under it, a strip of yellow ribbon tied to a nail. A thank you in Grayknife dialect. When we packed to leave the basin in March, the snow had begun to rot in that way that smells like pennies and pine. The roads surrendered by noon and froze again by 5. I carried the tin box to the door and asked Rowan what we should do with it. Leave the phone, she said. Leave the topo. Take the ribbons. Even the blue ones? Especially the blue ones, she said. We'll hang them on other things. We drove down valley in chains, the lodge shrinking in the mirrors like a mountain keepsake in a snow globe. In the city, friends asked if the altitude had fixed us. We said no and yes. No, because mountains do not repair. Yes, because mountains do not lie. When we fought, we tied the rope to a chair leg and to a doorknob and looped it around our wrists and stood 12 feet apart and talked until the rope slackened. It sounds dumb. It worked. A year later, we returned to Grayknife for 3 days. The switchbacks had left new notes in the notebook coordinates for caches I would almost swear had been ours. We skied the timberways. At the lower spur, the 3 blue ribbons were gone. In their place, a single strip of fabric fluttered yellow. We didn't leave it. We followed it down to the valley and tied it to the rescue hut door latch like a punctuation mark. Jonas poured tea that tasted like the bottom of a thermos and said, "You look better." "We fight with rope now," Rowan said. "Rope beats weather," he said, "most days." On the night before we left, the wind went somewhere else. We stood outside under a sky that was more stars than dark and listened to the ridge hold. Rowan took my hand and said, "I'm not sorry for the blue ribbons." "I'm not either," I said. "I'm sorry for the red circles," she said. "Me too," I said. We stood there a long time. 2 people who had started winter with maps that lied and ended it with a pocket full of string. If you need an ending, take this. Mountains are honest and people can learn. Not all at once. Not with noble speeches, with rope, with ribbons, with the sound of your own breath at 2 a.m., asking whether you want weather to decide for you or whether you will make the turn yourself and call it mercy. When we drove out the next morning, a fox crossed the road with something blue in its mouth. I laughed, and Rowan did too, and neither of us said what we were thinking, that somewhere a stranger would find a ribbon hung on a fence post in the city and stop themselves from saying something that would require a map and a winter and a rescue hut to undo. We didn't need to say it. Not every truth needs a mountain to be tall. And if you're wondering whether the mountain still keeps its counsel, yes. But sometimes if you listen hard enough, you can hear the ridge clear its throat before it breaks. Sometimes that's enough. Sometimes that is the only warning you get before the world moves, and you remember that honesty isn't the same as safety. It's just the thing you can tie a rope to and trust it not to pull free while you decide, one switchback at a time, to stay. If you made it to the end of this story, thank you. It means a lot. New stories like this one are posted every single day, so make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss one. And if this story touched you, please give it a like. It really helps more people find our content.